All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're looking at a pretty intense shadow war happening right on China's southern doorstep. We're going to break down Beijing's high-stakes double game in Myanmar's civil war and really get into the cold logic behind this strategy they call managed instability.
And this quote from a top analyst, it just perfectly sets the stage. You see, the loss of this command center isn't just another loss on the battlefield. No, it's a real turning point, and it shows you just how high the stakes have gotten for Myanmar's ruling military.
And this is the event he's talking about, the fall of the city of Lashio. For the military government, the junta, this wasn't just losing a fight. This was like losing the brain for their entire operation in the northeast. It's a huge strategic blow for sure, but maybe more importantly, it's a massive symbolic defeat that has shaken the regime to its very core.
Okay, so who are the main players on the board here? Well, on one side, you've got the state military. You might hear them called the Tatmadaw or the junta. They're the ones with the tanks, the fighter jets, the official government, at least on paper. And squaring off against them is the Three Brotherhood Alliance. And this is a coalition of ethnic armies that has turned out to be incredibly effective at challenging the state's power.
So let's zoom in on this alliance for a second. You gotta understand, these aren't just random militias. We're talking about really sophisticated, well-armed groups. You have the Tang National Liberation Army, the Myanmar National Democratic Alliance Army, and the Arakan Army. Each of these groups has deep roots in their own regions. And the fact that they're working together, that's what makes them such a huge threat to the junta.
And here, right here, is where the whole picture gets way more complicated. China, as you know, shares this long, kind of porous border with Myanmar. So literally nothing happens in this war without affecting Beijing. And Beijing's moves, or sometimes its choice not to move, can completely tip the scales. So what's their play here? What's the game plan?
To really get what Beijing is up to, you have to wrap your head around this one key idea: managed instability. This is not about helping an ally win a war. The goal isn't a peaceful, stable Myanmar. Nope. The goal is a Myanmar that's kept a little bit weak, a little bit divided, and totally dependent on China. That way, Beijing can control the whole situation and protect its own interests without ever having to fire a shot itself.
So how do they pull this off? Well, it looks like a total contradiction, but it's actually a brutally effective two-track policy. Publicly, China plays the part of the responsible big brother, right? They sell fighter jets and drones to the official government. But behind the scenes, they make sure the rebels get just enough weapons to keep fighting, to keep the pressure on.
And you can see the whole strategy laid out when you just follow the guns. The junta gets the flashy stuff, the jets, the armored vehicles, through official government-to-government sales. But the rebels, they get the workhorse weapons, the rifles, the mortars, through these unofficial back-channel routes. And the key to making this all deniable is having a powerful middleman.
And that middleman, the real linchpin of this whole strategy, is the United Wassa State Army, or the UWSA. Now, these guys control a piece of territory inside Myanmar that, for all practical purposes, is basically a Chinese province. They use Chinese money, Chinese cell service. This setup gives Beijing the perfect cover. It can arm other rebel groups at arm's length, maintaining plausible deniability while keeping the conflict simmering at just the right temperature.
And you can see this strategy playing out in real time. Back in late 2023, China basically used the rebels as its own personal police force to shut down these huge online scam centers that the junta couldn't or wouldn't deal with. Fast forward to 2025, rebels are threatening a key port, so what does China do? It sends its own security and starts talking directly to the rebels, completely bypassing the government. And then, after that big rebel victory in Lashio, Beijing steps in and tells them to pump the brakes, showing everyone who's really pulling the strings.
So why? Why play such a risky game? Well, as it so often does, it all comes down to money and resources. The biggest thing, the number one priority, is protecting the oil and gas pipelines that run from Myanmar's coast straight into China. These pipelines let Beijing avoid the risky sea lanes of the Malacca Strait, and to keep that energy flowing, China needs to have influence over whoever controls the land the pipelines cross, whether that's the government or the rebels.
And this is just a perfect, and frankly a pretty cynical example of the strategy in action. You've got Chinese companies selling cheap, off-the-shelf commercial drones to the rebels, who then modify them into deadly weapons. Then you have other Chinese companies selling expensive, high-tech, anti-drone jammers to the junta to shoot down the very drones the other guys sold. Beijing profits coming and going. It's the ultimate expression of managed instability.
But, and this is a really big but, this strategy has its limits.
There is one red line that Beijing will absolutely not let anyone cross. China is happy to see the junta weakened, humiliated, even dependent, but it does not want it destroyed. A total collapse of the state would mean absolute chaos right on China's border. It would threaten those precious pipelines, and it could create a massive refugee crisis. That is the one thing they will not allow to happen.
So what does this all mean? What's the final takeaway? Is China a master strategist here, playing 4D chess and keeping everyone exactly where it wants them? Or is Beijing just playing with fire, fueling a conflict that could easily spiral out of its control and create a massive explosion right on its own doorstep? For now, the puppet master seems to be in charge. The real question is, for how much longer?